Hello, everyone. Welcome to Unboxed, the podcast that dives deep into the world of custom packaging and innovative brand experiences. I'm your guest host, Alison Engleson. Today, we're bringing you a special edition episode focusing on sustainability with the amazing Birnur Aral. You're going to love her and all the wisdom she has to share with you. Let's get started. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Unboxed Podcast. I'm your guest host this week. My name is Alison Engleson, and I am so excited to be here with Birnur Aral. She is going to be talking today about sustainability. We wanted to do a sustainability episode. It's such a hot topic right now, as well it should be. And we wanted to bring in an expert, someone who's been in this for a long time, and clearly it's a passion of hers. So we're really excited to be here with Birnur today. She is incredibly accomplished in this world. She's got degrees from Stevens Institute of Technology and Columbia University. She spent 16 plus years at Good Housekeeping. Is that correct, Birnur?
Yes.
Yes.
And yes.
She's launched her own advisory firm now under her own name. And I'm just so excited to have this conversation. So welcome, Birnur.
Thank you so much, Alison, for having me over. I'm glad to be here and talking all things sustainability and consumer products. I guess that's where our audience is at. And, I am a chemical engineer by training. I do have a PhD, and my specialty was not sustainability. I wish it was, but back in the day, we weren't taught about sustainability as chemical engineers. And my specialty was more like material science and physics at the field called rheology that studies flow behavior of complex fluids like plastics and paste. And so that's how, I started, I guess, my career research. I worked for an instrumentation company. Then I worked for Unilever for 8 years in their R&D department, and making bar soap more skin-friendly, anti-aging bar soap. Then I worked for a fragrance house, and at Good Housekeeping, I was leading the beauty, health, and sustainability lab. For 16 plus years, where we test consumer products for efficacy and also check their safety as much as we could, and to making to help consumers make informed decisions about the purchases they're considering to make. So that's me in a nutshell. Recently this year, I launched my own consultancy. And my goal with this is to help relay what I've learned over, 20 plus years in the consumer products world and sustainability world to smaller brands, newer brands who are just starting out, and help them, set them out on their sustainability journeys, and for creating longer lasting brands. Because I think a modern brand needs to take sustainability into consideration today.
Yeah.
So I hope this gives me this gives our intro to our the rest of our conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I know a lot of our listeners likely know about the Good Housekeeping Seal of Approval, but in case they don't, that is a huge deal. And that is
it is
instrumental part of that, right? For many years.
Yes. Keeping seal is basically a licensing agreement. Products or brands would approach Good Housekeeping, and they seek to earn this emblem. And the team at Good Housekeeping would take a very close look at all the claims or all the marketing claims the product makes, ensuring it delivers on those promises, because it's attached to a consumer warranty. So if a product doesn't perform as it's advertised, the consumer purchased the product, can go back to Good Housekeeping and ask for their, refund or, replacement or repair.
Mm-hmm.
So it was a very meticulous process because first, we wanted the consumer to be absolutely happy with the purchase they're making, because if they didn't, they would come to Good Housekeeping and Good Housekeeping would be dishing out money. And the brand, it's over 100 years old, right? Not, it was built in, it was brought about in 1909. It has such a reach and credibility that we didn't want to erode this brand image. So I was a bearer of the Good Housekeeping Seal, like many of our employees. And so a lot of the thinking that I have now, I almost put the brands out there to the same, I guess, criteria or skepticism at at points to ensure that they do deliver and their messaging is also on point, because consumers sometimes might believe what is said is true, and not all products deliver like they should.
Absolutely. So it's really safe to say that you know how to evaluate products, you know how to evaluate brands, and now I know that, you've started your own company now. It feels like you're giving back a bit to me.
Definitely. When I was at Good Housekeeping, it, I have to say, most brands that were on our radar were, companies applying for the seal. And, there's a licensing program and there's a licensing fee. So there's a barrier to entry there anyway. So and so these are bigger, more established brands who've been around as long as Good Housekeeping. We're talking about the Procter and Gamble's of the world, L'Oreal's of the world. And so they already, have legal teams working on ensuring, marketing claims are through, ensuring their green claims are on point. Yes, I wasn't reaching the indie brands,
Yeah.
and especially, my, I guess, superpower, if you might say, is that, intersection of beauty and sustainability. So, and there are so many indie brands that I believe can benefit from a little coaching. And this was just like when I was, at a webinar, I had some follow-up questions afterwards. This just hit me. So, we don't have a sustainability office. A brand was asking, where do we start? And that's just, resonated with me a lot. A lot of the companies do not know where to start. Sometimes, there are words thrown around: clean, natural, and non-toxic, which some of our, are in our lexicon. It's there, but they're not well defined. And sometimes, those kinds of products might not be, sustainable in that sense,
Right.
if we end up using all our natural resources without sustainability in mind, we might have good products for a while, but then, it's not sustainable to keep, harvesting certain endangered plants and whatnot. So, yeah.
Right. Yeah, I think actually that's a great segue. We're going to talk about defining sustainability. We're going to talk about steps that brands, especially these smaller brands, maybe newer brands, can take toward their sustainability journey. And then we'll talk about the future of sustainability, ask you to get out your crystal ball and tell us a little bit about the future. So yeah, I think this is a great point as you were getting into your definition of sustainability and the different parts of it. Let's get into that. How do you, as the expert you are with all your experience, how do you define sustainability?
So I want to just start saying that everything we do as consumers, makers of products, businesses, could be government entities, no matter how environmentally conscious our actions are, there is going to be some negative impact on our environment, right? We're going to use resources, we're going to have some, outputs. Uh, so it's better to think about our actions and business practices, whether they're sustainable, meaning, can we continue doing what we're doing today without sacrificing the ability of future generations to take care of their needs? And I want to add quickly that this is not my definition, okay? So I'm not that smart. The United Nations established in the early 80s an independent organization. It was called the Brundtland Commission. And they wanted to address the need of economic growth while protecting the environment. And that's when they came up with this most prevalent definition of sustainability we use today. So to restate, sustainable development is development that meets the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. Very simple, hard to achieve or hard to define sometimes. But
there is
also,
that element. There is that element of meeting the needs of the now, which I think is really interesting, because sometimes when we think about sustainability, I think we only think about the future. We only think about preserving resources, and that's wonderful. But you and I talked in our prep call for this, which was wonderful. And we talked about how sustainability has to meet certain needs of the now as well to be considered truly according to this definition.
Yeah, I mean, sustainability, is thought to have three pillars, right? So there's, of course, the planet aspect, right? And that's kind of the now, and the future of the planet. But also people who are, involved in making a product, surrounding, let's say it's a company, people living around the company or factory, but also the profit, right? So, we can't just think about the people and the planet. We also have to think about the profit, because without the profit, it's not going to go on. So yes, there's the now. So the profit is as important as the planet, as the people. Okay. And, these again, as we discussed in our, prep call, are the pillars, and that are equally important, and they should be balanced, for any sustainable action to succeed. And, people call it the 3 P's of sustainability. Sometimes I've heard 4 P's. This like purpose is thrown around too, which again, might fit into one of these other buckets. But and sometimes folks talk about 3 E's: environment, economy, and equity. Again, but this is still speaking to the same 3 pillars, right?
Okay. So whenever you hear about those 3, sometimes 4 pillars, whether they're the P's or the E's, we're talking about the same thing there. I remember in our first call when you talked about profit as one of those 3 balanced pillars, I was floored. I was like, I have never, as someone who's not an expert in this area, isn't fully immersed in it, I thought, I have never heard profit as being important to sustainability. And I think that's a common misconception.
Yeah, I mean, businesses have to try, right? So there's, without the profits, you can't, unless you have somebody you're borrowing from somewhere, or someone is donating you this cash, how are you going to keep this business afloat? So yes, I'm by no means like the most removed person from finances, but uh, the profits or the money is important, obviously, and many times to actually make the case for sustainability, if you can actually justify it on the basis of uh, cost savings,
Mhm.
that also clicks with the financial folks. So yeah, they're all intertwined. It's just a different way of thinking. Uh, Not just thinking about profit, which is kind of maybe the classical way of running a business, but balancing out with people working for you, people you're delivering to, people are in your supply chain,
Yeah.
as well as the planet where you're dumping your, wastewater, right? Or where you're drawing, getting this extract from, etc. So yeah, it all makes sense actually.
It does. It does. It's a really holistic view of it that I think will be really useful for listeners to this podcast who are, some of them are one person teams, some of them are very small teams, and some of them are bigger companies. But if they're the people that are handling the branding and marketing and packaging, for their companies, then I think this sort of definition makes it easier for them to make sustainability a priority.
Right. And it's also makes more accessible in a way. It's like sustainability isn't just this kind of crunchy granola, activist thing. So it's all like, it was developed, the concept was developed because they wanted to, develop economies, but minding the planet's health. So it's just, it's all in there.
Yeah. Well, okay. So you touched on um, considering every part of your supply chain and the people who are involved and all that. So let's talk about footprint. We talk about carbon footprint. We hear about it a lot. We hear about offsetting carbon footprint. But I think a lot of people don't actually know a ton about it. So is that something you could talk to me about?
Okay. Yeah. So, what I would like to say about footprint is, as an engineer, I think of footprints in terms of inputs and outputs, where it could be a business, process, practice, or even at the product level. And for example, energy we use for heating, cooling, hot water in our homes, and our cars. They all need an energy source, right? So they all need an input. And unfortunately, in a majority of the cases today, we're still relying on petroleum-based fuels today to generate this energy. Energy comes from burning these, and this, generates carbon dioxide, amongst other things, but which is the output, right? So, and carbon dioxide is a greenhouse gas, meaning it accumulates in the atmosphere, increasing the warming effect. So naturally there's a greenhouse, right? Otherwise, the earth would be too cold, right? So this kind of is a blanket there, and it traps some of the sun's energy and keeps us warm and cozy. But with the industrialization, with the use of petroleum, we started dumping more of these greenhouse gases and carbon dioxide. We talked about it, but there's also other gases coming from other industries. They are increasing this warming effect beyond what's normal for our Earth and what's necessary. Um, 2023 was the hottest year on the record since they started measuring it in the late 1800s. So unfortunately, there's no doubt, at least in my mind, that global warming is real. Mm-hmm. And it's tied to fossil fuel emissions and industrialization. That's why carbon footprint is top of mind these days, right? So this global warming but there are other resources we use as well. So water, clean water we use to drink, cook, shower are all inputs. And the dirty water we generate are outputs. So water footprint is also talked about, right? Carbon water footprint. Then, of course, there are material footprints, right? We use materials. Some are dug out of as minerals. Some could be agricultural. And we generate waste products. And we can think of them as our material or chemical footprint. So this material could be not just, maybe innocuous waste, but there could be also some, toxic chemicals in there too. So that's kind of like the third step. Usually people start with, energy footprinting or carbon footprinting, and then water also savings, water footprinting is also becoming important or more common. And chemical footprinting is like even more difficult, because can you think about all the thousands and hundreds and thousands of chemicals that are out there and trying to, account for them? That's really a challenge as well. But let's just go back to the carbon footprint again. And I want to share some stats I recently looked up, and I wanted to share with our audience. So I'm going to give you some average numbers, and these are available for a person living in different countries around the world. And I hope this will give us some guidelines as to where we stand now and where we need to go. Okay, are you ready?
Yeah, let's go.
Okay, yeah. So the average carbon emission per person in the US is about 15 tons per year.
That seems like a lot.
Yeah, like actually it's 15, but it's 15 tons, right? So there's like per year per person. And what's most striking is that's like 5 times the world average. So, I believe we're the worst out there contributing. I think there might be some Gulf nations that are worse than us. And I am sharing with you, I think we can maybe place them when you broadcast this podcast. These links where our audience can check them out.
We'll put them in the show notes for this episode.
Great. We're like really one of the major contributors per person. And then,
I just had a question there. So is that because of our level of industry in this country? Like
our level of industry, our access to heat and hot water, like in our homes, right? Not every household around the world has hot water, let alone running water, running water sometimes, people's showering habits are different, how they wash, etc. I mean, we use air conditioning in our homes, to keep ourselves, cool in the summers. Not every household around the world has that. So that's where that comes. Also, internet. We are very interesting. Again, this is something I wasn't planning on, saying, but all these like data warehouses, all these hubs, and then they say they suck up so much energy. Crunching numbers, we don't think about it. Somebody was saying the other day, like sending an email or an attachment in an email is worse than just maybe typing it in the body of the email, and that energy that's there. We don't even think about that. Don't go that route, because I don't know the stats, but honestly, there are so many things that we don't even think about it. And we're so, I guess, information heavy, or we work from remotely most of the time these days. Maybe we have, decreased our footprint because we're not driving, but we're like more doubling up on Zoom, etc. So yeah, I mean, we are a major contributor. And I always thought of Canada, our neighbor, they're more conscious. They're like 14 tons per year. They're right behind us. And I was thinking, why could that be? Because they're, it's a cold country. Maybe they have to, use a lot more heat or something. Again, this is just kind of guesstimating. And I wanted to say, like, Europe, we always know Europe is ahead of us. And for example, in France, Olympics are going on right now, or I don't know, they might be over by the time you have this, but in France, they're about 10 tons per year. So they're about,
Still pretty high.
better. They are better than us. And the point I wanted to make here is that, again, I believe it was 2015, world leaders gathered in Paris. It's something called Paris Accord.
Mhm.
And they wanted to commit to decreasing greenhouse gases, emissions, whatnot. And they said we need to keep the global warming within 1.5 degrees Celsius compared to pre-industrial levels. So to be able to stay within that 1.5 degree warming, we need to get to 2 tons per year per person. So that's like we have to slash our thing almost by like 1/10 about.
Yeah.
I mean, it's mind blowing. Like you take one, air, you fly over the Atlantic once or twice, your budget is gone. So it's very sobering and mind blowing. But what I want to say is that's why it's not just, we need some systemic change in some of the ways we use energy or some of the ways our energy is provided. And so I'm not saying, individual efforts don't count. I mean, they do. But, it's more than that. Because, as consumers, we really have not much control over like where our energy comes from, right? So it depends on your locality. If you're in New York, maybe New York State, some could be hydroelectric, and gas, but some places there are still coal, and that's the worst type of in terms of emissions. And again, we really as consumers at this point don't have much say about how much plastic, for example, we put into our recycling bins gets recycled through municipal waste, right? So therefore, like I want to also, I know I'm kind of like on a roll right now. You probably want to give me like,
no, you're good. You're good.
Yeah. So it's at an event, I was talking to a climate activist, and they said, we want to do all the right things, and we were taught to we're put in a position to think as if it's all in our hands, right? If we, switch to a plant-based diet, took public transportation everywhere, and that's really not really possible in our country, unfortunately. Drove electric cars, yes, every bit will help, but again, as I said, as individuals, we don't have control over how clean our electrical grid is, right?
Right.
So, and the advice I was given is for citizens to keep bugging senators' offices about policy change, right? Apparently, if the senator's office gets about 10 calls regarding an issue, they will bump its priority up on their list.
That's good to know.
Okay, so it's not like even thousands or hundreds of calls, right? But dozens can make a difference. So that was really eye-opening for me, and I wanted to share that with this audience.
No, that's a great way. Like you said, there's not a ton of ways as an individual to make that big impact, but that sounds like a way to really get some momentum towards policy change. Now, I thought it was really interesting when you talked about blowing your budget for carbon emissions, your carbon footprint. And I thought when it comes to companies and organizations, it's interesting to compare it to a budget, right? And like if you compare it to like a financial budget and you're saying, okay, where can I save? And you tend to get pretty creative with it. You're looking at places where you can slash, your spending. So I think it's interesting. What I'm getting out of what you just said is that companies should, and organizations and brands should think more creatively, think more broadly about how they can reduce their carbon footprint or footprint in general and be more sustainable. That it's not just eco-friendly packaging, but it's how you're shipping that packaging, and that sort of thing. So I mean, I think this is a really good opportunity to get into like, what's your advice for organizations? What's
Yeah. Yeah. So, we alluded to that in the beginning, why I started my own advisory. Uh, you know, larger and more established companies, they have started their sustainability journeys 10, 20, 30 years ago, right? The big giants, consumer product giants. And by now, the most responsible corporations, they have separate sustainability offices that have been publishing corporate social responsibility reports for some time now, and now they're starting to bring these corporate efforts to the product level, defining what product sustainability means for them. And we see also other efforts such as product stewardship, which is also considering the end of life, hopefully also not, thinking linearly and trying to think circularly. Because, in the end, that will only help them increase the resiliency of their products or brands. But when you're a small brand, just starting out and trying to make sure you're profitable, right? You're probably not thinking of sustainability, or you're thinking about it and don't have the resources to know where to start. So, again, in sustainability, we talked about footprints. Metrics are everything, right? Because they say if you don't measure it, how can you reduce it?
Mm-hmm.
But again, they all need resources, personnel, or you need to hire consultants. Meaning you need financial resources. But you can't really go there right away if you're bootstrapping. So I'm going to talk about a couple of exercises I do with my clients before determining some action items or goals for them relevant to their businesses. So
amazing. First of all, thank you for sharing this wisdom.
Thank you.
On this podcast.
Yeah,
this is wonderful.
It's actually pretty simple. I mean, you could probably look it up and try to do this yourselves, as well as a company owner. But as you mentioned, some of your audience members, including myself, it's a business of one. And sometimes if you're in your own head and there are so many other things to do, some things do get pushed to the side, or you need a sounding board. But so first, I would like to start considering the value chain of the entire operation, right? So what's the nature of your operations? Are you buying ingredients from suppliers? Some companies might be, actually cultivating their ingredients, or are you processing them in a third-party manufacturing facility or your own facility? Are you using vehicles to transport products around, or are you having them shipped across from the other side of the world? How are your consumers using your products? How are they disposing the packaging? So sort of end to end, what are your inputs and outputs, right? Okay. In terms of energy, water, and materials. Again, we're not going to have numbers for these, although some, can get there. But we can have like this conceptual flow chart of what's going in and all the actions and practices linked to all operations for the business. It's going to be very useful. And then there's an exercise called materiality analysis that can be carried out. And that's basically talking to all the stakeholders of the operation, internal or external. External ones could be suppliers or people that you sell your product to, or the middleman. And also not just doing that, but also considering the important industry-specific criteria based on recognized sustainability framework. So it exists actually. If you're like in an agricultural product, if you're food or drink, there are frameworks and they have pointed out where the biggest impacts are. So that will all get you thinking about, oh, I'm buying such and such ingredient and this is an area where I need to pay attention to. So it's kind of like this kind of level, very top level exercise. So, but without diving too deep into these exercises, I wanted to say again, the aim is to determine the most vulnerable areas within the supply chain in terms of social and environmental considerations, and to come up with some priority actions, because you can't attack them all at once. Right. And you need to determine what's most material to your business, your company, your priorities in your industry. So, I would say, like, I've thrown around some terms here, value chain and materiality analysis. And, I don't want to overwhelm the audience.
Yeah.
And so I said, to make up for this fact, let me come up with some practical things, that they could do, hopefully. When, I think this also came up during our discussion. I was thinking of the time when I was taking analysis for energy efficiency class during my studies at Columbia University. Our professor talked about energy savings being the lowest hanging fruit for making operations more sustainable. And with that, the thinking is, for example, are you manufacturing your products in your own facilities, or you have your own offices, could even be a home office? Have you ever had an energy audit carried out? An audit can point out if you're losing excessive heat during winter months due to poor insulation or leaks. These are relatively easily addressed. And I'm told, again, I'm not like a professional engineer or anything, but these are things that can be fixed easily without like too much investment upfront, and they will pay for themselves over like several years, right? Not like decades, but it will pay for itself because you're saving energy.
Right. I was going to say, it's not only a step towards sustainability, but it sounds like it's a good move financially as well.
Financially, right. And so, and then again, if you're having your products manufactured at a third party, it's totally okay to ask them if they have done an energy audit, or if they've taken any other measures remedying insulation problems, or if they have changed over to LED bulbs. So again, this also speaks to the fact that in the sustainability field, it's kind of like a teamwork, right? So it's kind of like we're not only striving to change our own practices, but are also trying to bring our suppliers and partners along. So I guess asking these questions will at least get them thinking, and perhaps, if it's a modern facility, they might have already done it. And they might have already dug into water savings too, because again, it makes more sense. That will decrease their electricity bill, that will decrease their water bill. But at least they can maybe even provide you with some facts that you can use in your own marketing and verbiage that you would like to use in these areas. Yeah.
Very cool. So it sounds like moral of the story is don't be afraid to ask the question. Dig in a little
Right.
bit and don't try to tackle everything at once. Um,
Yes,
because even
prioritizing is my yes. Also, not just energy savings, but about because this is unboxed, right? About packaging.
yes,
Um, and often with indie brands, who are trying to make their products more sustainable, uh, most often it's somewhat easier to start addressing sustainability of packaging because that's the part that doesn't get used up, right? You don't use a product inside of the packaging, and the packaging is contributes mostly to the waste problem if not designed optimally. So trying to materials with recycled content, lighter weight packaging, or working with private recyclers such as TerraCycle to ensure the empty packaging gets collected and then gets recycled are all good actions, right? So it's not for free. There's some that finances need to go into employ such private recyclers, but it could be a first step depending on the priority.
yeah,
You know, because you know we see that a lot. Our packaging is fully recyclable. Great, but does it actually get recycled? Right. So that's the question. California, I think, recently came out with their where exactly you can use this term recyclability because they looked at what actually gets recycled in their state, and so they kind of rejiggered like if you can use that like chasing arrow things on based on just the material itself
okay,
that we're accustomed to. Uh, but you know, you know, recycling plastics, for example, right? It's all possible, but virgin plastic is cheaper,
mm,
so there's no economy of scale. Why would somebody collect this plastic and try to recycle and sell it if there's no market for it, right? So so as a company, sometimes providing this private recycling ensures that the packaging does get recycled.
So would you say that
Uh,
it's more powerful on packaging to be able to say made from recycled materials versus this is a recyclable package?
Absolutely, because I think recycled content, first of all, generates an economy, right?
That's true.
A, a market for recycled content. And it might help us get there to the economies of scale.
Got it.
Again, provide, as we said, providing end of life solutions, providing retail with actually less packaging. Because I'm emphasizing this because I've seen refills packed in very elaborate packaging,
Hmm.
not unlike the original packaging. So that kind of beats the purpose of having refills uh, and better shipping materials. Uh, all better than just kind of ignoring the issue. And you know, I want to and merchant boxes is an amazing partner for brands, helping them choose better packaging options in that sense. So I wanted to emphasize that you guys are doing a great job helping your partners.
Oh, well, thanks. I'm sure the team will love to hear that. And yeah, the Virgin Boxes is really good about giving all the options. And, it depends fully on the client what they end up going with, but it's really cool to see all the options given to them kind of across that spectrum of what's, recycled or recyclable or all that kind of stuff, or even down to, seed paper that people can plant in their garden and get a
Oh,
bunch of
I love those.
yeah, it's fun. Um, well, okay. I know we've been going on a while, and I cannot thank
I
you enough
know.
for sticking with me here. We're almost done. Um, But I think this, and also we could totally have you back for just a packaging conversation. I think we could talk for hours about that. But let's talk about greenwashing. That's a tough word. But there are some myths or, commonly held beliefs around recycling that you kind of touched on that last question. You talked about, people think that some people, I'm one of them sometimes, thinks that my recycling bin is just a magical portal to something being recycled. And I feel really good putting things in there. The reality is, I think a lot of them don't end up being recycled. So let's talk about some of these kind of myths in sustainability. I know you outlined a couple that you want. We won't be able to cover all of them today, but let's talk about ones that you think are important.
I mean, there could be a lot of misunderstanding or miscommunication around recyclability or recycling and the impact that it generates. But yes, I might have mentioned this already, but only 9%, I think, about plastic gets recycled through municipal recycling. And it's mostly PET, the water bottles or these clear bottles, and some are picking up more. But again, we talked about if there's no desire or for recycled content, nobody's gonna go out of their way of recycling these because they need to also have some profits. But yeah, I want to touch upon greenwashing, and this is kind of a very, an area very dear to me. And so, I think my body language changed when you started mentioning greenwashing. There's so much content out there these days because it's a crowded marketplace, right? So the brands are trying to find ways to distinguish themselves from the rest. And so we hear so many things, so many, new creative green claims. And many companies, I truly believe this, they are trying to convey their plans, their actions and achievements towards sustainability. But sometimes there's this disconnect between the verbiage that used in their product claims and the actual merit of their achievement. So, and this is the source of greenwashing, right? So, and I kind of want to run through some of these. And first of all, there's this kind of a lack of or perceived lack of regulations and guidance in this space or enforcement in this space. And that is changing fast. Could have been the case and, for a while. But of course, again, European Union is leading this effort. The audience might be available if they're selling to European Union. But again, this time Canada, our neighbor, last month, they announced their regulations to prevent greenwashing. But changes are also expected to the green guides. This is put out by Federal Trade Commission, a U.S. federal agency. Mm-hmm. The last update was in 2012. That's a long time ago.
Okay.
And last year they collected comments, and because so much more has changed over 10 years, right? Offsetting, climate neutral, carbon neutral, all these concepts has appeared, and they're going to bring about more regulations in that space. So again, I have a link that I'm sharing with you that you can share with the audience so they can look at least what these green guides are now, and they keep watching this space for when they come out. Every now and then when I'm talking about this, I go and say, have they come out with their, no, it's still the 2012, unless they do it between now and when you broadcast, they still haven't come out with it. Maybe.
Is it supposed to be this year?
This year.
Okay.
Yes, they said this year.
Okay.
And again, we talk about supply chain or value chain. Supply chains are complex, right? You might be getting materials from all over. And so, not all suppliers have data or measurements on their footprints. So, but this is also, changing. Data gaps are being bridged. I've heard artificial intelligence bridging some data gaps. Like, I mean, I was talking to this company. So, the guy says, okay, here's this, we'll be able to show this material to the artificial intelligence, and they're going to kind of be able to somehow scan, I guess, what the materials are and somehow make a prediction of what's the, life cycle analysis of this material somehow. Again,
Wow.
so don't quote me on that, but, I've looked at this carefully, but it's apparently going to happen. It might be happening already. And then third, I'm saying marketers could be pushing the limits of imagination. Or if you're a small company, you can say like, oh, my competitor is saying this. Why can't I say something like this? And you might be okay. You might be flying under the radar because you're small and nobody's paying attention or seemingly paying attention. But sometimes, litigation can come from anywhere. It could be, FTC sending out some warning letters, and they've done that in other areas like nutraceuticals, a bunch of companies. But also, if you're becoming a bigger, your competitor might be complaining about you to NAD or whatnot. So National Advertising Division. So there are, you want to avoid all that, right? You don't want to be dragged into that area. And then there has been litigation, amongst against bigger companies, against clean standards and whatnot. So it's a hot area.
Yeah.
And
it sounds like this kind of links back to what you said with your advice for small brands on how to start and, focusing on things you can do right now or setting, figuring out what needs to be done and then figuring out how to tackle that in a realistic way. Because it sounds to me like there might be an opportunity there to be able to say like, hey, we've done this and we've done it right, and be able to back it up and show your consumers, show your customers that you are doing it right and that you have the numbers or certifications or whatever it is to back it up, where other people are just making claims, right?
I know. I mean, there is I want to think about it. There's these blanket terms like environmentally friendly, eco-friendly, and things. Well, we have some whatever like better packaging, so let's just say it. But those are the terms I really advise to stay again, away from, and instead, qualify what you're trying to say. Like you could say, we are, our bottle is made with such and such percent recycled content. It doesn't sound as sexy or like, this kind of like familiar term, but that's kind of like the transparency that is needed in this space.
Yeah.
And that's where the consumer is going to start looking at these because they are also getting very educated in the space.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was going to say that might not sound as sexy to say the numbers it's made of this, but it does sound true. It sounds transparent.
Yeah.
And I think that is what consumers are now looking for. Yeah.
Say what you've done, right? Don't overstate it and be transparent. Honestly, if you're even not, you haven't done anything, but you're considering, you could just say that we haven't, this is our goal.
Yeah.
Where we have taken these actions, and that's so much more valuable to me as someone who's been in this field than just making, kind of sounding like you're the best thing out there.
Yeah. I think that's really valuable advice. I think you've given people, listeners, some really good first steps. So it sounds like you're saying, understand what you're working with, right? Take those first steps to understand. And then once you have a basic understanding of where you are in that sustainability journey, take steps that make sense for you and then share it truthfully. That sounds like a really good action plan for any
Yeah,
brand out there.
I think it's what brands need these days to 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 have longevity, to be around. Because we see many again, you know, many indie brands they come and go, especially in the beauty area, unfortunately. So many come fast
Mhm.
and furious, but it's a tough market out there because it's seen as an area sort of like a low barrier to entry in a way, because of FDA regulations and whatnot. So, and there's so many celebrity brands and all other stuff that let's not get into that. Uh, uh, but it's I think it's truthful, authentic, transparent, and take step by step, and learn as you go along.
Awesome. I think that's going to be really, really great advice and uh, advice they can take action on, not just pie in the sky stuff that is too
Yeah.
hard to reach. Yeah. Okay, I have one more question for you. But this has been really great. So now it's crystal ball time. What do you feel like the value of sustainability will be in the future?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's here to stay. I don't think it's a fad. Uh, and we talked early on, right? By nature, sustainability is forward looking,
Mm-hmm.
as you know, making sure that we don't deplete the resources for the future. So, um, therefore, any business striving for not just immediate growth, but for longevity, following sustainability principles can only benefit them now and in the long run. Um, for its evolution, we will see more and more companies adopt these principles and more consumers asking for transparency from businesses in terms of footprints, social responsibilities, as well as, again, we discussed this all like policy tightening around, all around. And then just brought some memories when I was talking about this question. Uh, while I was considering joining the Sustainability Analytics program at Columbia, I attended an info session. I remember the program director, Professor Steve Cohen, saying, in the future, all managers will be sustainability managers. So that just kind of like um, resonated with me a lot because, again, when we talked in the beginning, it's all common sense, really, right? It's kind of like if you could be more sustainable, you're gonna, it's gonna help around your employees, uh, the planet, possibly save costs, right?
Right.
If you can, save energy, you're gonna save costs. It's gonna save you grain. But so that, as I said, it resonated with me, and I think it still is true. Um, and so I think these initiatives can bring cost savings, as I said, and I think that actually brought about uh, you know some mindset change, uh, that sustainability. I guess adopting sustainability principles can actually bring along cost savings. Again, we're coming kind of like to this profit, or money linked in all this together.
Yeah.
Uh, they aren't anymore the costlier option. Sometimes they do help with the costs, and it's I think good for all companies or to think about adopting some of these principles.
Well, that's awesome. Thank you. And yeah, I think this whole conversation, the way it's kind of gone in a circle, kind of shows us that sustainability is a broader definition than a lot of people, a broader thing than a lot of people realize right now. And I love that quote that in the future, all managers will be sustainability managers. And I mean, I would love to think that in the future, all businesses will be sustainable businesses because they're going to have to be, and it's going to be in their best interest to be. So that is really great. Yeah.
I honestly, there's no other way. There's no planet B, right? As they say, we're all here, and it's for we should strive for an equitable and just uh, planet and workforce. And I think there's no other way. I can't see any other uh, business thinking anyway.
Right. Well, I think that is a perfect place to end. Just for all our listeners, so they know I've been looking forward to having this conversation for so long. So, and it definitely lived up to my expectations. So, thank you, Birnur, for being here. I know that people are going to want to get in touch with you after this conversation. So, what's the best way they can do that?
Yeah, so thank you so much. Alison, as we're recording this, I'm 10 hours ahead of you, and it's kind of midnight here.
I
So
know.
I hope, I think sometimes looking for words and searching for words. So thank you for bearing with me. Yeah, if you want to get in touch with me, I encourage everyone to visit my website. It's www. birnuraral.com.
Yep. And
And
we'll include
then if you,
that in
if
the show notes. So
yes,
everyone
thank you.
can grab it.
And if they like what they see, hit the book a call button to get in touch. That will bring them to an email form. And our first call will be a meet and greet to see if we're the right fit, if I'm the right fit uh, for their question or problem.
Mhm.
And it's free of charge. So
Amazing.
I'll be glad to talk to anyone who would like to get to know me and
Awesome.
what I can offer.
Well, again, for all the listeners out there, Birnur is amazing. This barely scratches the surface of the wisdom and knowledge she is able to impart. We have gone a long time here on this episode, but I'm telling you, there's way more for her to share. So I highly encourage you to book that call if you have any questions for her. But yeah, thank you for being here so much. Birnur, it's been wonderful. Um, Thank you, all you listeners out there, for joining us for this extended special episode of the Unboxed Podcast. And just a reminder, this podcast is a Merchant Boxes podcast. Merchant Boxes is available for all of your custom packaging needs, all your branding needs, and they would be happy to help with Birnur's help provide you with sustainable options for your packaging. So thank you very much for being here, and Birnur, I'm sure we will talk again soon. Thanks. The Unboxed Podcast is sponsored by Merchant Boxes. If you have any questions about custom packaging or brand design, or want to learn more about what we talked about on today's episode, email hello@merchantboxes.com or go to merchantboxes.com. See you next time.